You've received a prophetic word from God about your life, your family, business, church, or ministry. You've prayed about it, you've weighed it up, you're excited and filled with faith. But then, instead of the quick fulfillment that you anticipated, you've entered a time of trial, and it seems as though the very opposite of your prophetic word is taking place. And now you may be asking, what is God doing? Or is this the enemy at work? How should I respond? If you can relate to this, here are 4 biblical reasons why the opposite of your prophetic word may be happening. And the first is that this circumstance has been allowed by God to test and reveal your faith. Abraham is an example of someone who believed God's promise when there was absolutely no physical possibility of it coming to pass. And that was the very point at which his faith was manifested in God's sight. The Bible tells us that against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations. When it's physically impossible and you still believe God's promises, at that very point your faith has reached its maturity. A second reason is the principle of death and resurrection is at work. There's a biblical precedent for a vision from God going through a death time, a winter season when it seems like the opposite of God's promise is taking place. Take David, for example. He was anointed to be king by the prophet Samuel, but before that prophecy was fulfilled, he became a fugitive. So the opposite of God's promise for your life is happening right now. Remember the heroes of the faith. As you stay on track in your heart attitude and your relationship with God, His resurrection power is coming through for you. A third reason the opposite of your prophetic word is happening is that your prophecy was preparation for spiritual warfare. It's like Paul wrote, "Timothy, my son, I'm giving you this command in keeping with the prophecies once made about you, so that by recalling them, you may fight the battle well." That prophecy God gave you is part of His heavenly arsenal. Your Father knew that the battle was going to be up ahead, and He's given you a weapon to wage warfare with. Put the promise of God and the Word of God in your mouth and begin to shout. This situation will be turned around. Those finances will be turned around. Your health will be turned around. That person's life will be touched by God. That promise will be fulfilled, and you will rise and do what God has called you to do. God's plan is still on track, and ultimately those strategies of the enemy will fail. And finally, number 4, God will receive the greater glory when His word is fulfilled. Peter writes, "These trials have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." The greater the trial, the greater the impossibility, the more glory that goes to God when His prophetic promise is fulfilled. Determine now that your testimony will be, "I held fast to the prophetic call of God on my life. I kept a song of praise on my lips when it seemed as though the opposite was taking place." Your Father is already at work in the background to fulfill His promise, even when you can't see what He's doing. He's arranging people and circumstances, and your prophetic promise will be fulfilled.